Alrighty, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Coffee Chats. Today we have a very special guest with us, Nick Mori, and he'll be talking a little bit about Tesla and Microsoft. So, would you like to give yourself an introduction?
Yeah, perfect. So I'm a current senior here at Purdue University studying industrial engineering. I've had internships at Microsoft and Tesla, and I've also gotten offers at Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and a few other companies. So I've had a lot of internship experience. I'm part of the gear program here at Purdue, so I did have an opportunity to study and work abroad. And yeah, I'm excited to have an opportunity to speak to you today.
Yeah. I mean, this will definitely be fun. So, when did you start looking into internships and really developing your professionalism?
Yeah, so I would say I was doing research with Dr. Kai, the industrial engineering professor, starting summer of my freshman year. And I continued that basically all throughout until my junior year. I did 2 research projects in her lab. And so fall of 2020 comes around, so it's post-COVID at that point, or it's during COVID at that point, and I just apply everywhere. So I interview 16 times and I get 16 rejections. It was a crazy semester. And finally on the 17th, with some help from my mentor and some other resources, I was able to land the Tesla internship.
Nice. Could you talk a little bit about the interview process? How did you prepare and what the interview looked like?
Yeah, Tesla has a pretty intensive process. I'm an industrial engineer. I was applying for a manufacturing position. And so it's not the typical mechanical, electrical, or computer science sort of interview. They were asking me questions about how to formulate the traveling salesman problem, which is a linear programming problem, traditional stats problems, so control limit tendencies and confidence intervals, some simple stuff, but you just have to know a lot.
Did you know all this going into it, or was it on the fly?
Yeah, so my mentor who worked at Tesla, interned at Tesla, he kind of gave me that heads up. He was like, it's going to be technical, you should study. And I studied everything there was in the entire industrial engineering curriculum. Something that I did a lot was I looked through the entire description, and I went line by line to see if I could identify every single acronym, understand every single verb, adjective, everything in the description had to be understood. And maybe that was overkill. He never asked me anything about the description or any of that knowledge. But it sort of shifted my perspective in terms of how to interview, because that was a real first challenging interview. It was also the real first interview that I thoroughly prepared for.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, there were maybe one behavioral question, one STAR question, and then the rest of the 29 minutes were all technical questions, all technical what would you do scenarios, and sometimes there isn't a right answer, but there is a right answer to the way you're thinking and the way you're going about to answer the question. Quite frankly, I don't regret having studied all of that in that weekend, because I really think that he could have asked almost anything in that process. And it was definitely it still is one of the most challenging interviews I've probably have had to date. I mean, Tesla internship spots are pretty competitive.
That's true.
So that one was definitely, after the interview, I really thought I went to my room in depression and thought, man, I completely messed that up.
Hey, but now you're here, so.
Yeah, now it's a different story, but in the moment, it's a different feling.
Yeah, so also just to clarify, it was just one technical interview, 30 minutes, or were there multiple rounds?
Yeah, I did speak to to HR once, so I did have a quick chat, 30 minutes. He just reviewed my resume and my interest and passion for Tesla, which is something that's crucial for kids looking to get into Tesla, is show your passion, show your interest. I had 2 years worth of electric vehicle and autonomous vehicle research experience, so I bet that really
that helped you
a little bit.
Yeah.
But I had the one interview with the recruiter, nice and simple. Just go over your resume, sort of trying to make sure that they're vetting you for the position. And then I had the technical interview, so that was super challenging. And then I had the interview with the manager, and that was very, I think it was more relaxed. From what I could tell, he just wanted to figure out if I was a nice guy.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then during your internship experience, you did like a whole year, right?
Yeah, so I was originally slated on to go from January of 2021 until around July of 2021.
Okay.
So it was supposed to be a nice solid 6 months. But Tesla was a fantastic opportunity. And as part of the GEAR program, one of the requirements is to study or work abroad. So sometime in early April during my internship, I kind of saw this opportunity to travel or transfer internally for Tesla. So I was interning in California, but I was actively working with some teammates in the Netherlands.
Oh wow.
And
Okay.
yeah, so that was a really an opportunity for me as I saw it for me to go from the main plant to a secondary sister plant and do some knowledge transfers, help bridge the two locations, and do a lot of improvements related to those pieces right there. And so in April came around, I started writing this business case and trying to outline why it'd be valuable, why they should sponsor me because I'm not a European citizen, why they should send me over. And then I sort of brought it up to my manager and presents to him, who in turn presents to his manager, and his manager, and his manager, and his manager, and eventually got approved by the guy just below Elon.
Really?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
That email chain is hilarious. My manager, he's like a younger guy, so he thought it was really funny. But at the very end of the chain, it was like, the descriptions of me kept getting more condensed. It was like, he wants to do this project in Netherlands, ROI, da-da-da. At the end, it was like, intern wants to work in Netherlands for this impact. That was it. And the guy said, okay, period. And just his signature.
That is crazy.
And then my manager was like, that's the only approval we need to to start going. Because I was the first engineering intern at Tesla to be sponsored from the US to go abroad to Europe that I know of. So if there is anyone out there,
comment down below if you know of anyone.
I know there's a lot of European interns who are sponsored to come to the US, but seldom is it the other way around.
Okay.
And so that I know of, I was the only person that the whole organization, the whole team under a certain VP knew of that had been sponsored and sent abroad by Tesla, and that was
crazy.
insane. So I just extended my internship until I started in the Netherlands that fall semester, and ended January of 2022. So
Okay. So
January
what did the
2021 to January 2022.
Yeah. So you were kind of hopping around, but it was 6 months and then another 6 months.
It was more like 8 months and 9 months in California and 3 to 4 in Europe, just
That's
because the visa the visa thing took so long.
Yeah.
And during COVID it was pretty challenging.
But that's very impressive. Yeah. I was just thinking that Elon Musk would have approved you.
I was starting to sweat. I was like, if Elon Musk sees my name, I don't know if
you're in. You're really just in.
It could be really good. I could be fired immediately, or it could be sent there, on the private jet.
Yeah.
There's no middle ground.
Yeah. So for the students out there that really want a Tesla internship, what advice would you give to those?
Yeah, that's a tough one because I don't come from a formula or a racing or a mechanical engineering background. I know a lot of students do come from that background and are able to get at Tesla. And that's definitely one way to go about it. For me, I did electrical and autonomous vehicle research here at Purdue. I'm not sure if that really has helped me apart from the recruiter being piqued by my resume. I think that was the only aspect in which that helped. But I will say that getting an interview at Tesla is pretty challenging. The first thing that I would recommend for students out there looking to get a Tesla internship is making sure your resume is up to spec. There are automated resume readers that companies use, and making sure that your resume is readable and is in a good format is absolutely crucial. You have to think about your resume, as sort of like a test, right? If you have one shot, and if you do well, you can get an interview. If you don't do well, then you have to keep trying. The second piece of advice is once you do get the interview, it's your final exam. If that was your midterm, this is your final exam.
That's a good way to put it.
You have to be sure you're studying every single word on that description. Just knowing those definitions off the bat would really help you differentiate from others. You look knowledgeable, you look prepared, you look like you did your homework. And then also not only studying about on the description, also study anything that can be related to manufacturing. Talk to your friends, talk to more experienced people who have been in those positions, and ask them, what sort of concepts should I study for? And yeah, I think if you have a cover letter as well, so getting the interview using your resume, interviewing well, and then if you have a cover letter, I never submitted one. I'm not sure how effective cover letters really are in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I don't typically submit them. I feel like most recruiters don't even read them. So.
Yeah, I feel like it's a bit of a moot point. I've gone Apple, Amazon, Tesla, and Microsoft were all without cover letters that I can remember. I don't think even Apple accepts cover letters, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
Those are the three things that I'd recommend working on and making sure you're prepared and you have skills honed for.
Yeah, thank you so much for the advice. Now we're going to transition over to Nick's Microsoft experience. So would you like to tell the audience a little bit about how you applied and what the interview process is?
The interview experience was, I would say, longer, but less technical. So I was interviewing for a hardware project management internship role. I like it more to consulting. You're more making insights using PowerPoint decks than actual executionable insights, and you go actually make them. So the interview process was I talked to a recruiter first, I think I want to say early October.
Was it like an on-campus recruiter, or did you reach out on LinkedIn?
So for all of my internships, I actually never reached out to anyone on LinkedIn. Every time I reach out to someone on LinkedIn...
that's such a flex. That is such a flex.
Every time I reach out to someone on LinkedIn, they never get back to me. For better or for worse.
Okay.
I've never successfully networked, and maybe that's something that I've been working on it, but I can't get people to get back to me or establish relationships just through LinkedIn. And if you're successful at that, definitely use it. But maybe I'm not that kind of person. I just feel a bit awkward going hey, give me a job.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah. But for Microsoft, no, I cold applied to their website. My resume looked great at that point. After you get a first internship, the odds of you getting interviews just goes through the roof.
Yeah.
And so I interviewed with the recruiter first. So just a quick recruiting chat. It was pretty simple. And then I interviewed with a Microsoft's person. I learned that she was the project management full-time employee for, I think, recruiting. So they have someone for that.
Okay.
Interesting. So she was also a recruiter, but on she had been involved on the team, so she knew the technical aspects of it. And then I was asked to interview on a full day panel. Some companies call it a gauntlet, but it's basically a 6-hour interview process or whatever, where you're interviewed. It was 5 hours, but you're interviewed by 6 or 7 different interviewers all day, and it was actually...
That is a gauntlet, yeah.
It was actually crazy. I think it was from 10:30 to 3:30, so that's 6 hours with a 1-hour break for lunch. The first half hour was, all the candidates were put in the room and you're just told hey, this is how today's gonna go, and then good luck.
Just go for it.
Yeah, then just go for your interviews. And Microsoft was super non-technical for a project management role. I know for SWEs and for software engineers, they tend to make you go through leak code and they test your skills and whatever. But for project management, it was more about how you interact with your teammates. It was more about star questions, what would you do? Tell me about a time. How would you react? It was more those sorts of questions, and then questions on given a situation where you're asked to do this, sort of a real world scenario kind of role play, if you will. And that was it for the 5 hours, 4.5 hours I interviewed. It was all sort of this question about trying to learn about my past experiences at Tesla, and then also learning about how I interact with the team and how I react in certain scenarios.
Okay, yeah. So now that we touched upon that, could you talk a little bit more about the skills that you learned during that interview?
Yeah, primary skills that I learned were mostly actually non-technical, I would say. The only technical skill, and maybe this doesn't surprise anyone out there, but it's how to make PowerPoint presentations. I think people in consulting will know there is a better way of making PowerPoint presentations.
Alignments, all that.
Yeah, and like whatever, the shortcuts and the keyboard shortcuts and whatever. And that was something that I never even thought about. I never cared about that. But when I went to Microsoft, they really sent me through like a boot camp of how to make PowerPoint presentations. Week after week, I got feedback from my mentor, my manager, those around me. No, you should change this. You should make it this way. That was actually a really good experience that I had. I think when I look at PowerPoints now, my opinion and view of the quality of them changes significantly.
Yeah.
I learned how to navigate a huge organization. I think I talked to over 15 teams within a single organization. That's massive to me. So I sort of learned how to navigate such a huge organization. I learned how to be more like diplomatic, I would say. Sometimes there were conflicting interests. You couldn't say things in a certain way that might get a lot of pushback. You had to be very cautious with wording, learn how to compromise, where to say stuff, where not to say stuff. That was definitely interesting. Microsoft is a big corporation, so as with any big company, there are competing interests in one team.
Yeah.
And then the last one was definitely presentation skills. So I had to present my project multiple times. Information does not spread as quick as in a small team like a Tesla. You have to present different teams and different stakeholders, and for every single team you have to present differently and talk about different aspects of the project. So getting to know who your audience is and how to change your content slightly and your wording to make sure that you're hitting the right points was really important as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, last question, would you do anything differently?
I think when I was a sophomore, when I was a freshman, I was a little bit over my head in terms of where I wanted to work, what company I wanted to work for, location I wanted to work for. I'm from the East Coast, so I wanted to go back to the East Coast or wanted to go to the West Coast. I didn't have a particular affinity for the Midwest. Mm-hmm. And so freshman and up to sophomore year, I only applied for jobs that would put me on the coasts. I did not apply for traditional manufacturing jobs in the Midwest, and I think long term that probably hindered me a little bit. Things worked out great, but I didn't have an internship until spring of my junior year. And if you're a student out there, in the same position, it can be scary. All your friends have internships and have multiple experiences at that point, and it's not a nice feeling or place to be in.
Yeah.
And so I think sort of being willing to accept, my first internship will not be where I'm at for the rest of my life, and I'm only here for 3 months, and the experience is invaluable, and I'll gain a lot of money. Just those factors are really important considerations, and I think as a freshman, it's good to make sure that you have that experience. But other than that, there are 3 I'd say character traits that I think students should always look to having and practicing. And the first one's humility, so that one's be a bit more humble in terms of where you want to go for your first internship, being more humble as the location you want to be in. Mm-hmm. So humility is a big one when looking for an internship search. There's no shame in starting off in a smaller company or a company that's not your dream choice and then moving up later in your career. The second one I would say is patience. If things aren't working out, I think all you can do is try and practice some patience. I was very, very impatient. I still am to this day. But try and be patient in terms of everything in the application process. So how you go about applying, maybe it's not the right moment, it's not the right moment. Maybe if the internship doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Practicing that patience and it's fine, and I'll get next semester and I'll keep trying is really important, especially to try and balance your work and school. Sometimes you just can't apply to a million jobs, and you have to just say it's okay. I missed out on an opportunity, but it's not the end of the world. And the last one I would say, and I tell this to students all the time, but it's adaptability. And that's a skill that I think...
Okay, so unfortunately the video cut out at the very end, so you guys are going to have to hear me talk for a little bit. But yeah, I hope the video was helpful for those of you who are interested in working at Tesla or Microsoft. I feel like Nick especially had a lot of great things to say. A little bit on the last point about adaptability.
Everything in college is obviously like changing very rapidly, and I think a lot of people go through that stage in life where every single year is going to be a different year. You're not really sure where you want to be, and there's a lot of different like moving parts, right? So keep the big picture in mind. Don't just focus on like one specific thing, and like you said, be adaptable. There's a lot of different opportunities out there. If you find that your first internship isn't something that you want to do full time, then obviously there's a lot of different routes that you could go as well. So keep an open mind, explore different opportunities, and really just make the most out of college, professionally speaking. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the YouTube video. I know this one was a little bit lengthy, but it has some really great content. So thank you for sticking around. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys later.